So my buddy Daryl tells this awesome story about this one time that he was on a Greyhound bus. And he's going to South Carolina in the middle of July, sweltering outside. And the bus barely gets out of the station before the AC goes out. So about a half hour in, everybody starts yelling at the bus driver, like, man, you got to pull over and switch buses out. It's too hot. And the bus driver, as my buddy Daryl describes him, looks like Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And he gets in the microphone and he goes, folks, I know it's hot. I'm sorry, but I'm going to need you to bear with me. We're not switching buses. We'll be in South Carolina in 8 hours. This one young dude steps up and he goes, no. He gets up, and there's emergency hatches on the bus. He tries to open that and get some fresh air in. So Uncle Phil leans in the microphone and he's like, sir, I'm going to need you to sit down before... And the guy goes, before you do what? What you going to do, fat ass? He goes, what am I going to do? Pulls the bus over to the side, and then in one of the greatest lines ever said outside of a movie, Uncle Phil leans in and he goes, next stop, ass whooping. Took this young man outside and whooped his ass. I love that story. I love it so much, in fact, that when my buddy Daryl moved to San Diego, I just kept telling it on his behalf. Anytime I was at a lunch or I was like at a bar or something, and people bring up like the topic of transportation or travel, I'd go, oh, you think that's crazy? This one time, my buddy Daryl was on a Greyhound bus. And then I would launch into the story, and it always killed. Like this one time, my wife and I went to a dinner party, and it was a new group of people. We're like trying to make a good impression, so we're sitting there after dinner and having a couple of cocktails, and well, wouldn't you know, the topic of conversation shifts to road trips. And a couple of people tell some really boring stories about, like, one time I drove to a national park. People almost started leaving, you know, but then they got around to the table to this one really good-looking guy. Not me, it was another guy there. It was two of us. Sorry if that was confusing. No, but he told what was actually a very funny story about this time that he got completely wasted in Dewey Beach, and then he convinced a Delaware state cop to drive him all the way back to D.C. in the backseat of his cruiser. And yeah, that's what I said. But absolutely true. And, well, as far as I could tell. So, whole place starts laughing, right? But I noticed that one person was laughing a little bit harder than everyone else. And that was my wife. And I got this little pang of jealousy. I was like, wait a minute. What, like that little tail he wove? You like that, huh? Okay. All those little funny ha-has he sprinkled in, you liked? Okay. I said, okay. So I let the laughter die down a little bit, and I went, well, you think that's crazy? This one time, I was on a Greyhound bus. I don't know why I said I, but I figured if Daryl liked the story so much, he shouldn't have moved to San Diego. And I launched into this story in the first person, and I just crushed it. Like, it was amazing. And now that I'm in the story, I can add all these little fun asides to it, you know, like the guy that went to get the emergency hatch on the ceiling. Would you believe he was sitting right next to me? Oh, this fucking guy. He gets up, he climbs over me. I said, where are you going? He goes, I got this. I was like, damn. And I got these people eating out of my hand at the dinner party, and I started leading up to the punchline. I said, you know, one of the greatest lines ever said outside of a movie, Uncle Phil leans in and he goes, next stop, ass whooping. Everybody falls out of their chair. I was on fire. I burned up everything at that dinner party, including the distant memory of Pretty Boy's story about, who the fuck even remembers? It's my night now. Fuck him. So we walk outside. My wife's like, that's not how I remember the story going. I was like, well, get used to it, because I'm telling it that way from now on. And for the next 3 years, that's exactly what I did. Like 25 times I must have told that story. And it went over gangbusters every time. Until this one time that it didn't. I was at my office Christmas party. Things are winding down a little bit. My boss comes up to me and he goes, Mike, where are we going next? And I don't get a lot of FaceTime with my boss, so I was like, oh. I said, well, me and a couple of my friends are meeting at a bar downtown. You should come with. He's like, I'm going to come with. I said, good. A couple of my coworkers see the boss man's coming with us. He's like, they're going to glom on too. I said, that's fine. It's good. So we get in now. I got 4 coworkers, one of whom is my boss, going down to meet 5 of my personal friends. That's 9 people with one common bond. That's me. Center stage. I love this shit, right? So we get down there. We're having a good time. Start knocking back some drinks. Might be laughing a bit too loud, but they never hurt anyone, right? Got a couple of strangers that gather at the bar. That's what a good time we're having over there. And then there was like this lull in the conversation, and this woman I work with, she goes, Mike, tell him the one about the Greyhound bus. Dude, that's how awesome this story is, okay? People are calling up and requesting it, okay? It was like the summer that Hey Ya came out. Like, everybody wanted to hear it. I was like, oh, you want to hear? I said, well, this one time, I was on a Greyhound bus, and I can see everybody starts leaning in, and they love it. And I'm going, but then I noticed this one guy in the front is not loving it. In fact, he's doing the opposite. He looks like he's just disgusted. He's got his arms crossed. He's got a big scowl on his face. And I've told this story enough times at this point that I can just do it straight from muscle memory. And you're like, what does that mean? That means like my mouth is up here going like, and people are yelling at the bus driver like, you got to pull over. Meanwhile, my head is like laser focused on this guy like, why are you not enjoying my story? Everybody else here loves it. So I keep going, and everybody, again, they're enthralled. They love it. Look at Debbie fucking down in the front, looks like his dog's died. I'm like, dude, what? I'm dropping gold up here, man. Like, are you not entertained? So I start building up to the punchline. I said, if he doesn't like this punchline, somebody ought to check his pulse, because he might be dead. Like, this story never bombs, right? And I said, and then, in one of the greatest lines ever said outside of a movie, I take this big, long, dramatic pause. And then Debbie Downer goes, let me guess. Next stop, ass whooping? And I went, damn, how'd you know? Yeah. And he looks back at me and goes, is this what you do? You go to bars and you tell other people a story? And then it clicked. I was like, oh, Debbie Downer was my buddy Daryl, to whom the story actually happened. Turns out he'd moved back from San Diego. And you're probably like, wait, you didn't know that? No, I did know that. I actually talked to him for like a half hour before that. But that's how far I had detached him from this story. In fact, when he said that, I went, this motherfucker's trying to steal my story. And my boss looks over, he goes, wait a minute, this isn't your story? And I said, well, it's kind of inspired by true event. And Daryl goes, it's not his story, it's my story. You think Mike, come on, man, that's ridiculous. I was like, damn it. So the first people to leave are the strangers that glommed on. They have no dog in this fight, they just leave. And my boss looks at his watch, he's like, it's getting late, I'm gonna go. Of course, my coworkers they follow him out. So my friends look at Daryl, they look at me, and they go, you guys need to work this out. They leave. So now it's just me and Daryl. And he walks up to me, and I'll never forget this. He looks at me and he goes, Mike, you're a bitch, and he just walks away. I was like, okay. So there was the guy that was holding court about 5 minutes ago, surrounded by 15 people, now drinking by himself at a bar. And this is the first time that I've told that story since that night. And I'll tell you, even with my buddy Daryl here in the crowd tonight, I realize that I still tell this story better than you do, and I'm going to continue to tell it. I've learned nothing. Thank you.